right, got one more division to get through, so let's get this fucking shit over. Let's talk about the AFC West, the land that the Chiefs rule and everybody else is trying to play catch up, basically, right? Yeah, I mean that's pretty much for all intents and purposes what it is. Even though they did have three teams make the playoffs last season, you know, it's the Chiefs and then it's everybody else. So when you look at this draft, I'll start off with the Denver Broncos. I don't know that I was a huge fan of what they did. Um, Jahdae Barron at pick 20, like, should they have just taken Omari and Hampton there? You know, it's especially interesting to see how that plays out since he was ultimately taken a couple of picks but later by the Los Angeles Chargers. I realize, you know, you don't always just draft for need, and maybe they felt like Barron fills a pretty big void in their secondary. I don't know. Maybe they just felt he was best player available. I don't know. I just look at their draft and like, was Barron really the optimal pick for them at pick 20? Defense wasn't really the issue this past season. It was the fucking offense, right? And you got to build around Bo Nix. Now, to their credit, they fouled that up on day 2 with a couple of picks invested on the offensive side of the ball. But am I the only one that thinks that R.J. Harvey was a bit of a reach at that point in round 2 and Pat Bryant was a bit of a reach in round 3? Like, yeah, admittedly, I was not a huge fan of this draft for them. Like, being able to get Savion Jones at pick 101 felt like the best pick. You know, certainly Crawshaw, the punter from Florida, you know, he'll have a chance to stick and be there for a long time, so that'll make this draft look a little better. But you would assume Barron's going to come in, he's going to play well. Harvey will certainly get some opportunities. I just didn't think he was the best running back on the board at that point. I'm sorry, I didn't. I thought he was a 1 to 2 round later talent than where they ultimately took him. So that kind of weighs into my grading. I thought this was like a C or C minus draft for the Broncos. Next up, I'll go with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, you know, when you're in the Chiefs position, you're a 3-time defending conference champions. You've won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. In theory, you don't have a ton of needs, but it's always helpful to be able to find young talent that can carry a low cap figure to continue to replenish your roster. That's how good teams stay good teams, great teams, and championship contending teams stay great teams and championship contending teams, which the Kansas City Chiefs certainly are. And I find it wild that Josh Simmons was able to fall to them to pick 32 in round 1. You know, without the knee injury, he certainly would go higher in this draft. He would. And he's got just everything about him screams out like he was a top 5 to 10 talent in this draft class. And the fucking Chiefs get him at 32, where they had a really bad need at tackle. So they were able to address that. And even trade back a spot with the Eagles to still make that happen. Just wild shit to me. And it's funny sometimes how the board will fall for some of those really good teams, and it really works out well for them. And then you look at day 2, they invested some on the defense. Omar Norman Lott, the defensive lineman from Tennessee, gives them another piece that can hopefully get a little bit pressure on the quarterback to balance against Chris Jones. Then Ashton Gillette, the edge rusher from Louisville, again, trying to get some pass rushers because, you know, we saw in the playoffs, right, and in particular in the Super Bowl, what were the keys to success for the Eagles? Their offensive line, really good. Chiefs' offensive line, not good. Eagles' pass rush, really, really good. Chiefs' ability to stop pass rush, not good at all. Doo-doo, if you will. So, address the trenches on both sides of the ball makes a lot of fucking sense. You know, then they get like Jalen Royals in round 4. You know, feels like a guy that could have maybe went a little bit higher in this draft, although I think he's right about where he should have been drafted. But a guy, again, you put him into this system, who knows? And then getting Brashard Smith, the running back from SMU in round 7. You know, is it another Isaiah Pacheco type of situation where you get a running back that outplays his draft position perhaps? But I thought it was a solid draft for the Chiefs, like C+ type of stuff where, you know, you're able to get a guy like Simmons at a place that he really shouldn't have been able to get him at. And then I look at the Los Angeles Chargers, and I was a fan of what they did in the first few rounds of this draft, going pick 22, Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. Probably a lot of thought here were the Chargers going to take a tight end, and with the way it was going to play out, Loveland and Warren just weren't going to be there. So what do? You need to still build around Justin Herbert at the end of the day. He's the key. Or in the case of Herbert, like, you need to find a way to take some pressure off him so he's not as likely to gag it up in the big spot. I don't know. But yeah, being able to get Hampton here at 22 and having the Broncos pass him at 20, even though it felt like there was a lot of potential that they would take him there. Like, I think this will work out really, really well for the Chargers. Hard to knock them for that. Then turning around and back in round 2, drafting another wide receiver, in this case Trey Harris from Ole Miss, although I have a little bit of question about speed and his ability to separate. He's a guy, again, like, you're building around Herbert. Like, you got to give him some more weapons. And then Caldwell, the defensive lineman from Oregon, again, address the trenches, right? Throw more pieces there. It's such a critical part. I thought maybe arguably their best pick of this entire class was getting Kyle Kennard, the edge rusher from South Carolina, in round 4. And he was a guy a couple months ago you were talking about maybe first to second round or mid-second round kind of territory, and you got him in round 4. That's pretty good value. So I thought this was like a B- draft. I look at Hampton. I think he'll have a big impact in that offense right away. Kennard has a chance to outplay his draft position. Caldwell does as well. So it was a good class for them. But ironically enough, I think the big winners here, for what all it's worth, in this year's draft in the AFC West were the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they have to be. Ashton Jeanty was just the home run pick for them at 6. No reason to overthink it. You've got Pete Carroll. You don't hire Pete Carroll for 10 years from now. You hire Pete Carroll because you're trying to force yourself to win now. And in this draft, you really didn't have a quarterback. You've already traded a third-round pick for Geno Smith, which factors into this draft grading as well. You got a legit top half of the league starting quarterback for only a third-round pick. That's pretty damn nice work from a draft standpoint. And then you layer in a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who was one of the few true blue-chip talents in this draft. I mean, it was the pick they had to make. They just had to. And then they turned around on day 2, invested in some skill players like Jack Besh, the wide receiver from TCU. And then early in round 3, Darian Porter, the corner from Iowa State. He's big. He's fast. He's a little older as a prospect. But, those are 2 guys you could see certainly coming in and providing some value. Really like those picks. And then late in round 3, drafting Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. You're taking a couple of swings at building up the depth on your offensive line, giving yourself some future flexibility. Maybe one of these guys can contribute in a way. I mean, if they got anything in terms of value out of day 3, that'll be all the better for them. But yeah, like, Jeanty feels like a big-time great pick. Besh and Porter feel like they're year 1 starters. And one of either Grant or Rogers should be a future starter in the NFL on the offensive line. And then again, like I said, when you layer in Geno Smith being acquired for a third-round pick, I know that's not the wow move. It's not the one that makes you a contender, but the Raiders got better a lot in this offseason, and that has to be accounted for. And they did a good job here in this draft, so I got to give them like a B grade. They were certainly one of the winners of the 2025 NFL Draft.